Today we're going to look at lesson 4.3, writing equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. Now, based on the video you just saw, filling in these definitions should be pretty simple. Okay? The essential question, how can you recognize lines that are parallel or perpendicular? All right, parallel lines are two lines in the same plane that never intersect and have the same slope. So if the song that you just heard is not enough to remind you, I also like that when you spell the word parallel, there's these two L's side by side that kind of resemble two lines that are never going to meet. Okay, but two lines in the same plane that never intersect and they have the same slope. Okay, which means the slopes are exactly the same. This is where our focus is going to be today. So I want you to highlight, after you fill in the blanks, I want you to highlight where it says have the same slope. Now, perpendicular lines. These are two lines in the same plane, according to the song we just heard, that intersect to form right angles and have slopes that are opposite reciprocals of each other. Now, perpendicular tends to give people the most trouble. So let's go over this slowly. All right, if I give you the number 2, what is the opposite of the number 2? Negative 2. If I give you the number 1/2, what is the reciprocal of 1/2? 2 over 1, or of course 2. Now, what if I have a slope of negative 1/4? What would be the opposite reciprocal of that number? 4 over 1. A positive, because it's a negative, we need the opposite, which is positive, and the 1/4, we flip it and we get a 4 over 1, or just a 4, okay? So I want you to fill in the blanks, and I want you to highlight where it says have slopes that are opposite reciprocals of each other. This is key. If you don't understand opposite reciprocals, then perpendicular lines are going to be real confusing. But we're going to start with parallel lines, and I'm actually going to turn you loose with your tables right off the bat, because it says determine which lines, if any, are parallel. And if the focus is the slopes, you are going to find the slope of each of these lines. Now, before I turn you loose with your table, let's write down. You should know this by heart now. What is the formula to find slope? M equals y minus y over x minus x. So take the next couple minutes, find the slope of line A, line B, line C, and then decide together if any of them are parallel. Now, the first thing we need to do with each of these is we need to write down that formula. All right, Ms. Johnson, do I have to write the formula down every single time? Yes. Okay, in your notes, yes. Because the more you write it down, the more you're going, or the quicker you're going to memorize it. So we write down the formula M equals y minus y over x minus x. So Haley, tell me what you guys did back there for y minus y.
2 minus 3.
All right, so 2 minus 3, which means for x minus x, you did what? 1 minus negative 4. And what did you have to do right off the bat?
Change the double negative.
The double negatives became a positive. So what was 2 minus 3? Negative 1. And what was 1 plus 4? 5. Now, you'll notice I'm going to throw the negative sign out in front of the fraction. That way we don't get super confused. Because remember, it doesn't matter if the negative is with the numerator or the denominator. If there's only one negative sign, the whole fraction is negative. So you'll notice I just put the 1, that negative, just out kind of in front of the fraction. So we're going to circle this. We're not going to box it because this is not our final answer, but we do need that information. All right, letter B. Let's do it again, and let's write the slope formula. So M equals y minus y over x minus x. Hayden, what did you guys do for y minus y?
M equals 0 minus negative 1.
Okay, 0 minus negative 1. So that was over what?
Over negative 3 minus 1.
Okay, what did you see right away that you needed to fix?
Negative.
The double negative became a positive, and so your slope equaled what?
M equals 1 negative 4.
1 negative 4. And again, I'm just going to put that negative out in front of the entire fraction. There's only one of them, so I'm going to put it out there in front. All right, line C. Again, the formula, M equals y minus y over x minus x. All right, Anj, what did you guys do for y minus y?
We did -5 minus -4, but I'll turn it to positive.
All right, hold on. We'll come back to that in just a sec. You did -5 minus -4, and then what'd you do?
Then we had 2 minus -3.
Good. And you did what? You cleaned up the what?
You made the double negatives.
Double negatives became positives in both the numerator and the denominator. So, Anj, what was negative 5 plus 4? Negative 1 over 5. And again, I just threw that negative out in front of the entire fraction. Now, you had the slope of all three lines. The question, or what you were trying to do, is determine which lines, if any, were parallel. Now, what did we learn about the slope of parallel lines? They are the what? Look at your notes. It's in your notes. Parallel lines, the slopes are the what?
Same.
The same. So do any of these lines have the exact same slope? A and C. So your final answer is that line A and C are parallel. That is your final answer. Now you can't make that determination, okay? Did you see that? I just totally misspelled parallel. Sorry. Parallel. My bad. Okay, so line A and C are parallel. That takes us into example number 2. It says, write an equation of a line that passes through the given point and is parallel to the given line. So grab your highlighters and let's highlight a couple things. First of all, equation of a line. We talked about this yesterday. We have to make sure we know what they want for a final answer. And when you see the words equation of a line, you must think slope-intercept form. So once again, let's highlight equation of a line and then let's write above it. What is the slope-intercept form of a line? Y equals mx plus b. I also want you to highlight where it says parallel, because this is important. I want you to look now at the 3 steps that I've given you for doing these problems. It says find the slope, plug the point and slope into your point slope formula, solve for y. Does anything seem familiar about those 3 steps? The exact 3 steps we did yesterday. Now there is one missing. Does anybody recognize which of our steps is missing from yesterday? Pick a point. Seth, very good. Why do you think it's missing?
Because it's only judgment.
They've only given us 1 point. So we don't have to pick a point when they've only given us 1 point. All right? Now here's the biggest change from yesterday. Look at how we're supposed to find the slope. We're supposed to look at the given equation. So again, I want you to either circle, I want you to highlight, but let's circle the equation, because sometimes when you see a problem and there's 2 parts and there's only a semicolon between them, I think we just don't get it sometimes. So I want you to find, right here is the given equation. This is the equation of their line. So here's what we do to find the slope. Once we find the slope of their line, then we can decide what our slope is supposed to be. So is this problem in the form where we can easily pull out the slope? Yes. What is the slope of their line?
1/4.
The slope of their line is that 1/4 right there. So if their slope is 1/4 and our line is supposed to be parallel to their line, what's our slope need to be?
1/4.
The same exact number, 1/4. So write it down, and now we have a point and we have a slope. What are we going to do with the point and the slope? Where are we going to put it? Look at step 2. In the point slope formula. Now, if you want to, up next to that note, let's write down the point slope formula. Everyone say it with me. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. All right? So there is the formula. Let's go ahead. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. And let's plug in those numbers. Y minus, Makai, what is the y coordinate of the point that they've given us? 2. Equals, what did we say our m was? 1/4 times x minus, Riley, what is the x coordinate of the point they gave us? -4. So right off the bat, what do you see we need to do? Fix that double negative, make them both positive. Now, unfortunately, we can't stop. Yesterday, we got to stop at this point, but today we can't because they want the equation of a line. So look at the last step. It says solve for y. What do I have to do first, Hayden, if I'm going to solve for y? Distribute. Good. We went back and reviewed that yesterday. You've got to distribute before you can do anything else. So Hayden, when you distribute the 1/4, what do you get?
1/4 x.
1/4 x.
And
Now listen, we like a 1/4, a 1/3, and a 1/2 because what we're essentially doing is we're taking our number and dividing by that denominator. So 4, we're multiplying it by a 4th, or we're dividing it by 4. So what's 4 divided by 4? 1. Okay, you also have the option of your calculator, but a 1/4 times a 4 is 1. Now, we're not done. How do we finish this problem?
we gotta subtract the 2 from the 1.
Not subtract it.
I'm at.
Okay, we got to move that 2, and we're going to move it by adding. Now, remember, you only add and subtract to like terms. So we crossed out on the left, and y equals 1/4 x plus what, everybody?
3.
Plus 3. And this is our final answer that we box in. Now here's what we just found. If we graphed their line and if we graphed our line, they would be parallel to each other because they have the exact same slope. Now we're going to circle the equation again because we want it to stand out. But we have 3y minus x equals negative 24. Now, is this equation in the correct form for us to be able to pull the slope out easily? No, so what do we have to do to this equation before we can find the slope? Okay, solve for y, or put it into y equals mx plus b form. So what do we move first? All right, we're going to add the x to both sides. Now, keep in mind we can only combine like terms, and negative 24 and x are not alike. So let's bring it down in the mx plus b form, which means we're going to bring down the x term and then the minus 24. All right, what do we do next to get y by itself? Divide. Remember, when we are dividing, we have to divide every single term by 3. Okay, when we add something, we can only add it to its like term. But when we multiply or divide, we're dividing it by every term. So we have y equals, now what is understood to be in front of that x?
1.
A 1. So that means, and this is a mistake I saw on the test last week, you had this written down, but you brought down the 3, and that was it. But this is actually a what? What should you have actually brought down here? That's a fraction. What's the fraction?
1/3.
1/3, and then you can drop the x down beside it. And of course, negative 24 divided by 3 is negative 8. Now, do we have it in the correct form?
Yeah.
All right, now we can identify the slope. What is the slope of the line they've given us? 1/3. So, if our line is supposed to be parallel to their line, what is our slope going to be?
1/3.
1/3, the exact same thing. So here we are again, we have our point, we have our slope, and we're plugging it into, everybody say the formula with me, y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So y minus, go ahead and fill these in with me, y minus 2 equals 1/3 times x minus 18. All right, Jakari, what do we do next?
1/3 times x.
Which is, okay,
1/3 times
which is, again, remember, we like the 1/3, the 1/2, the 1/4, because we take that number and divide it by that denominator. What's 18 divided by 3? 6. All right, and again, you always have the option of your calculator, but we should hopefully be able to do these pretty quick. Now, we're not done. Riley, what do we got to do to finish this one?
have to take plus 2, right?
We got to add 2 to both sides. Now, remember, we add only to its like term. So y is equal to 1/3 x minus 4. And there is our final answer. Again, if we graphed their line and our line, they would be parallel to each other. That takes us into perpendicular lines. Example number 3 says, determine which lines, if any, are perpendicular. Again, we have to find the slope of each line. But what do you notice right off the bat? This time they did not give us ordered pairs. Instead, they have given us equations. So what form do we need these lines in order to find the slope? Y equals mx plus b. So probably not a bad idea next to the directions that say find the slope of each line. Write down, again, y equals mx plus b. All right, now look at line A. Is this in the correct form for us to find the slope? No, so here we go. What are we going to do first? Subtract 2x from both sides. We're going to bring down 6y equals. Remember, can we combine negative 3 and negative 2x? No, they're not like terms, so we're going to bring down the x term first and then the constant. Am I finished? Nope, I got to do what? Divide every single term by that 6. So y equals, now be careful, this is a fraction. What do I have to do to fractions? Reduce. So negative 2/6 is going to reduce to what? Negative 1/3. We can drop the x down beside the fraction. And what about negative 3/6? Minus 1/2. Yeah, be careful. That stays a fraction, but we can reduce it. So what is the slope of this line? Negative 1/3. Awesome. Circle it. Don't box it. And look at line B. Is line B in the correct form for us to pull the slope out easily? Yes, this one's already in slope-intercept form. So what's the slope of this line?
3.
So m equals 3 is all we need to write down, and then we're going to circle it. All right, line C. Not in the right form. So what are we going to do first? Subtract 18x. We bring down the negative 6y, and it equals, Seth, what are we bringing down on the right side of this problem?
Negative 18x plus 1.
Perfect. Negative 18x plus 9. All right, and to finish this off, we're going to do what? Divide every single term by negative 6. So y equals, what's negative 18 divided by negative 6? Positive 3x. Now, a positive divided by a negative is going to give me a, what kind of answer? A positive 9 divided by a negative 6 is going to give me what kind of an answer? Negative, but 9/6 is just going to do what? It's not going to give me a whole number. It's just going to reduce. What's it going to reduce to? 3/2. So what is the slope of this line? Positive 3. Now remember, we're trying to determine if any of these lines are perpendicular. So are any of these lines perpendicular? All right. Line, let's see. Treyon, which lines are perpendicular? A, and you might want to put A in this quote so it doesn't look like line okay? Line A is perpendicular to line B and C. To line B and C. Because remember, perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals. If line A is a negative 1/3 and line B is a positive 3 or 3/1, then they're perpendicular to each other. Okay? But line C also has a slope of 3. So line A is perpendicular to line B and C. Now, if we were going to go a little bit deeper, what could you tell me about line B and line C? They are parallel to each other. But the problem doesn't ask us to do that, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Okay? Line B and C are parallel because they have the same slope. Okay? But line A is perpendicular to both B and C. Now, the last example we have today. Write an equation of a line that passes through the given point and is perpendicular to the given line. Again, you've got to pay attention to the directions. So I want you to highlight equation of a line. What does that make our final form? Y equals mx plus b. And we're going to highlight perpendicular. Because again, this makes all the difference. We've got to find the slope. So we got to make sure we understand they want our line to be perpendicular to their line. All right, we've got the same 3 steps. Find the slope, plug the point and slope into the point slope formula, and solve for y. So look at letter A. Let's circle the given equation. Is this in the correct form for us to pull the slope out easily? Yes. What is the slope of their line?
-3.
The slope of their line is -3. Now, our line is supposed to be perpendicular to their line. So, Caleb, what does our slope need to be if theirs is -3? But it's That would be parallel. We need a line that is perpendicular to theirs. So let's go again. If you need to go back in your notes, go back in your notes. Perpendicular lines have slopes that are what? Opposite reciprocals. So Caleb, try again. If they have a negative slope, we're going to have a, what's the opposite? Positive. And if their slope is 3, what's the reciprocal of 3? Okay, think about 3 as a fraction. It would be 3 over what? If we wanted to write 3 as a fraction, it would be 3 over what? So what's the reciprocal of that? Flip it. What's the reciprocal? 1/3. So if their slope is -3, ours has to be positive 1/3. All right, so here's our point. Here's our slope. So let's plug it into our formula. Say it with me. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So y minus 5 equals 1/3 times x minus -3. We see that double negative. And now we do what? Distribute. Timothy, y minus 5 equals, what do we get when we distribute? One-third x plus 1. All right, and how do we finish this one? Everybody, anybody? We add 5 to both sides. Again, add only to the like term. So y equals 1/3 x plus 6. So if we graphed their line and our line, they would be perpendicular to each other. All right, now look at letter B. One last problem. Find and circle the given equation. Is it in the correct form for us to be able to pull out the slope? No. So what do we have to do? Okay, it's so close to being in the right form that all we have to do is divide every single term by 2. So y equals 4x minus 3. So what is the slope of their line? 4, which means the slope of our line, again, they want our line to be perpendicular to theirs. So, Desiree, what would our slope need to be if theirs is 4? Negative. I like negative because that's the opposite of positive. But that 4 over 1 is what it already is. It's already 4 over 1. So 1/4. Good. It's got to be a negative because theirs is positive. Theirs is 4 or 4 over 1. So ours has to be 1/4. Now here we are again. We've got a point. We've got a slope. So let's plug it in. Say the formula with me. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So y minus 3 equals -1/4 times x minus -3. What do we do? Double negative becomes a positive. Then we distribute. Good job, Jeremiah. So y minus 3 equals. Jeremiah, what do we get when we distribute? Get -1/4 x. We got to be careful, okay? This is a negative divided by a positive, which is a negative. You got to keep in mind this is 3 over 1. So Jeremiah, you would do 1 times 3, which is 3, because we already have the negative, and 4 times 1, which is 4. So this one's a little bit different than the others, just because 3 was not actually divisible by 4. But what's the last step? We add the 3 to both sides. Now, I want you to think about this. Let's think about this in terms of food. If we have 3 whole pizzas and a 3/4 has been eaten, how many whole pizzas are left? 2, and then 1/4 of that last one. So, as a improper fraction, that would be what? 9. As an improper fraction, it would be 9/4. And this would be our final answer. That is lesson 4.3.